Hi, everybody. This is Fred with WP Shout. This is the first of 4 webinars, live webinars for up and running buyers. In this webinar, we're going to cover questions coming up in the first third of up and running. And yeah, I'm an open book for your questions about WordPress, WordPress development, and the contents of up and running. So if anybody who has a question, maybe just sort of say, I have a question in the chat, and then either write your question in the chat or unmute yourself. When I ask you, unmute yourself and read your question out verbally, and we'll get going. Yeah, anybody? Okay. I'm not seeing anything in the chat just yet. I'm guessing you guys may be typing. Thanks, yeah. So anybody got a question? You can either type the question out or say, I have a question, or here's something I would like to understand about WordPress. It's really just an open session for us to talk about anything in WordPress development, especially, should have come prepared with some questions. Well, what do you guys want to know? What do you want to know? What came up in the first sort of up and running that wasn't 100% clear, or what in WordPress development do you wish you understood better? Patricia asks, is this session about themes? Patricia, it totally can be. What would you like to know about themes? And if your sound is set up right, I'm going to go ahead and unmute you. You're unmuted now. Maybe try to ask your question verbally, and let's see what happens.
Oh, thanks, Fred.
Hi.
I don't have a great microphone on this laptop, but I use Beaver Builder, and a lot of times I struggle with just adding the CSS in many places, and you've done a great job, with your blogs. A lot of times I'm jumping between Genesis and BB, and I'm pretty much dropping the Genesis piece because Beaver Builder seems to have better support and I understand it better now. So I use the BB, and I use the BB child theme, and I use the BB themer, and the themer is where I'm often stuck with the header and footer and shutting that off in a theme.
Got it. So I think the question, so Beaver Builder itself is a page builder plugin. Beaver Builder, I love almost everything about Beaver Builder. One thing I don't love about them is how confusing the names of their products are. Exactly. So Beaver Builder is a plugin, page builder plugin. There's the Beaver Builder theme, and that comes with the Beaver Builder child theme. And then there's Beaver Themer, which is something completely different. It's a plugin that basically, it actually kind of replaces the WordPress template hierarchy. It's sort of like this drag and drop replacement for actually doing PHP-based WordPress theme development. And so that ecosystem together can be really powerful for building websites. And in general, if I was going to build like a small client website for, somebody with a, yoga studio or something, I would probably use either the Beaver Builder theme, or I might use the Astra theme, which I like with most things, Beaver Builder is more solidly built and it's less buggy. But the way Beaver Builder products seem to be, except Beaver Themer, like the way that the Beaver Builder theme is and the Beaver Builder page builder plugin is they're extremely reliable, but they're not as feature rich as like the sort of second best option. So like Elementor is the second best page builder in my view. Elementor, I really don't like using Elementor. I don't like working with it. It's buggier than Beaver Builder, but it's quite a bit more feature rich. And I find the same thing for the Beaver Builder theme. Astra is sort of my second favorite theme to do for, just small to medium projects. Astra is more feature rich than the Beaver Builder theme, but it's also buggier. So that's a little bit of background in terms of what we're talking about. And I think your question was, you were kind of using the Beaver Builder plugin and Genesis with a Genesis child theme, and now you're more using just Beaver Builder themes themselves, the Beaver Builder theme itself plus Beaver Builder plus Beaver Themer. So I'm understanding on all that. And then the question was something about how do I add CSS or how do I use Beaver Themer? What was the question?
That was true. One of the things you just said was that it replaces the WordPress hierarchy. And I've been going through your WP Shout, to understand how to develop in WordPress. And that wasn't clear to me, that's what Beaver Themer was, or Beaver Builder was actually doing, or any page builder in that case.
Yeah, so Beaver Themer is a plugin that is this really powerful and hard to understand thing by the people who built Beaver Builder. And yeah, it basically, maybe I can, like ordinarily the way you would define how, your blog index looked, right, is you would go into the WordPress template hierarchy and you would code it out in PHP. You would say, index.php is going to look this way. So I always like to, show an example. So maybe I'll try to get into WP Shout itself, and I'll just show you what the WP Shout index.php looks like. Okay. So like this is we built this theme from scratch essentially, and like this is how our index.php looks. And we did all this custom stuff in it to make the WP Shout homepage look the way it looks. Actually, I don't believe index.php is handling the WP Shout homepage. But in any case, we did all this custom PHP to make the relevant pages look the way they look. And that's usually how you do theme development. What Beaver Themer does is, rather than working in PHP, they give you this kind of drag and drop interface where they say, okay, well, how do you want your site's blog homepage to look? And you essentially use the Beaver Builder plugin to kind of like drag a header and then like drag a body and then a footer. And then you say, in the footer, I'd like some social buttons. And it is pretty powerful. It's almost kind of like an alternative to learning PHP-based WordPress development. But in my opinion, it kind of locks you into using that way of thinking about WordPress development. And it's really nice to know the fundamentals. So yeah, and the last thing you said is that it's not clear that that's what it does. It isn't clear. Like Beaver Builder just the Beaver Builder team needs to have just clearer marketing, and it would be wonderful if their products didn't have like the same identical name, so it's hyper confusing. But that really is what it does. It's like this sort of kind of secretly extremely powerful plugin that is essentially, you could call it a theme development plugin, which is why they called it Beaver Themer, which was still a bad idea in my opinion. So yeah, I'm sorry, I'm more like giving background information rather than answering your question.
Oh no, you really did. I just, as I said, I'm looking at the WordPress hierarchy and trying to understand how what I'm doing on WP Shout relates to the tools I've been using. And as I said, I didn't realize that it replaced the WordPress hierarchy, and I'm looking at the functions PHP file and I'm trying to figure out what this is doing. So just that explanation alone helps me understand the tool that I've purchased.
Yeah, so it doesn't technically replace the WordPress template hierarchy, but it's a creative way of letting you do the kinds of things that the template hierarchy does without getting in there and coding PHP. So certainly the WordPress template hierarchy continues to run on every WordPress site, including one that has Beaver Themer on it. Sorry, that's my 8-month-old. Give me 1 second.
That's okay.
It's our lunchtime. Yeah, so That's the way kind of everything works in WordPress. The fundamentals are always running. The PHP fundamentals are always kind of clicking away and chunking away, but people will develop creative ways of you sort of surfing on top of that without using code. And the Beaver Builder plugin itself or any page builder plugin is a perfect example of that. It's not like, oh, well, my theme's no longer running because I have a page builder plugin. The theme is running and it thinks in PHP, but then the page builder is running and it thinks in JavaScript. And that's how you get the sort of interactivity that a drag and drop page builder provides. So Beaver Themer is that same thing, but it gets more deeply into what theme development usually is about. Okay, I see a lot. I hope that's helpful.
It did. It was. Thank you.
You're very welcome. And everybody, go check out Beaver Themer. It's a pretty cool, it really is pretty amazing software. I did an article, if you look up WP Shout, like WP no code, I did an article basically building a website with zero code, like pretending I didn't even know CSS. I did it sort of at the end of last year, and what I ended up using was, I believe, the Beaver Builder. I either used Astra or the Beaver Builder theme, and I used the Beaver Builder plugin, and I also used Beaver Themer. So there's more detail about how to build like a pretty nice looking site with zero code in that article. Okay, Beth says, I have a question about custom image sizes. Wonderful, let's hear it. So Beth, I'm gonna go ahead and unmute you. Do you have?
Hi.
Yeah. Hi. How's it going?
Okay, so custom image sizes. I know how it works, but I'm curious about the best way to handle them. For example, say the largest an image is like in the container is 500 pixels wide.
Yeah.
When I make the custom image size, should I be doubling that so that on Retina screens, the browser, like I know WordPress makes copies, right? And then the browser picks the best one to use. So yeah, should I be making that custom image size double of what it shows at?
That is a very good question. And I'm gonna go ahead and share my screen. This is a website I'm working on for my wife, who's a college counselor. And we're just in the starting phases of it. And the short answer to your question is, yeah, I think that is, so I'm gonna show you the custom image sizes that I registered, and then we'll kind of talk. So this, what theme are we using here? Let's see, themes. I think we're using the Beaver Builder theme, but let me just double check. Yeah, so we're using the Beaver Builder theme. And one annoying thing about the Beaver Builder theme, again, almost every time I'm annoyed with the Beaver Builder people, it's because there's not enough options. They create things that are very beautiful and solid and are not buggy, which is why I use them, but they tend to not have enough options. And in this case, so this is her blog section, and I wanted the featured image on her blog section to be cropped to this aspect ratio. I always wanted it to be a rectangle with these dimensions. And the Beaver Builder theme has no option for that. The way that the Beaver Builder theme works is it will output the entire image. So if you look at this, the original of this image, it's actually taller than it is wide. And that's how it was looking. So it's like if you would go to this blog post, the first like screen of scroll was all just this sort of very vertical image. And so yeah, just this week, I had to go into the Beaver Builder child theme, register 3 new image sizes. And I did exactly what the question was asking. Here, I just saw something in the chat. Let me just, cool. Yeah, I did exactly what the question was asking, which is I registered a featured image standard size, I registered a featured image large size, and I registered a featured image medium size. And this 819 by 502, this is the size that that the thing is in its standard form. Like it's never wider than 819. Like here, if I narrow my screen a little bit and get the sidebar to go away, you can see it widens out to anyway, this was, I actually think I'm wrong. I think it gets as wide as 822. So, but for whatever reason, Beaver Builder had a version of it that was 819 pixels wide. But what I did is I doubled that. So I created a 1638 by 1004. And then I created half that and then half that again. And you have to, the math has to be exact, because what happens is, okay, part of the question was there's this source set thing where WordPress does responsive image sizing by default. For about the past year or two, WordPress will find the smallest version of an image that it can that is still large enough to display on your device. In other words, if you're on a tiny iPhone, if you're on a tiny Android phone, and there's an image that's loading in, and it's like, let's say it's a square image, and the full size version of the image is like 2000 by 2000, but there's a medium sized version of, there's a medium large size version of the image that's like 768 by 768. It will only serve that smaller version of the image to your phone because that's all your phone needs. And it speeds the site up. It causes less data to come across, and it causes the site to load quicker. Now, the only way that works is if the image sizes that it's substituting in are the same dimensions, meaning the same aspect ratio as each other. So like I had to kind of get in a calculator and multiply this out so that, 1638, 1004 is exactly the same aspect ratio as 819, 502. And then, I don't know, I just had to sort of pray that like it was rounding up and not rounding down, so that 410, 251 would consider that the same aspect ratio. In other words, if this featured image standard were square, but this featured image large was like a wide rectangle, responsive image sizing would not work, because WordPress is not going to serve a square image in the place of a rectangular image as you shrink down. So it's not going to say, oh, on a desktop, sure, we'll give them a rectangle, but on a phone, we'll give them a tiny square, because it knows that would mess everything up. So yeah, this is exactly what I did. I took what I thought was the largest size that it would ever be, which was 819. I doubled it for Retina devices. Retina devices have have twice the pixel density, and so they'll display really beautifully crisp images. And the way they do that is every image they show is actually twice as large as the space it's in. So I created a featured image large for Retina devices, and then I created a featured image medium for phones in the hope that not every phone would need to load this 800 by 500 version. Some phones could get 400 by 250. So exactly what you're wondering if that's a good idea. That's as far as I know, that's best practice, and that's certainly what I do on my own sites when I need to register a custom image size of a particular dimension.
Thank you. And I remember you guys have an article on your site mentioning that you think you should upload a large size, right? So yeah. Even though, yeah, so the original size photo.
Correct. Okay. That's exactly right. So let me show you the original. Let me show you the original image that my wife uploaded. It's enormous. I mean, it's 2000 by 2500, right? Mm-hmm. And why do we want that? We want that because if we want to screw around with this image and we want to like crop it so that we're only showing the windows for whatever reason, hey, I just want the windows from this, foofy looking college room, we can do that. And if we want to like take this image and blow it up and put it on a t-shirt for some reason in 5 years, we can do that. Whereas if we upload like, a precisely sized version of that image where we have gone into like Photoshop or whatever and cropped it to the exact size that the blog section is now, then if we change themes or if we want to do something else with this image or whatever, we're kind of stuck. We don't have the high quality original version. And now we're like looking, we're looking on external hard drives to see if we still have the original file or whatever. So use WordPress as a file storage system for images. And then what you do is you create image sizes that tell you exactly the right size to load in onto the site. And if you know what you're doing, you'll never be in the position of loading like a 5 megabyte image onto a page. You'll always be loading a version of the image that WordPress has resized automatically.
Like for clients, if storage is a concern with web hosting, I've never used this, but something like Amazon, right? The web services has
AWS,
really cheap storage. Is that what you would recommend for people who are concerned about storage?
I mean, this would have to be a client who has, I would say, tens of thousands of images for this to be an issue on most hosting.
Okay.
For example, WP Shout has been running since 2009, and many of our articles have images, and they all have featured images, and we're doing what I'm describing. We're uploading large images in most cases, right? And we're just on like a SiteGround GoGeek account. It's $30 a month, and we also actually run, or we were actually until about 3 months ago when we moved to Kinsta. But for about 12 years there, we were running WP Shout and a bunch of other sites on a SiteGround GoGeek account. And we never really hit our storage limit. I think the storage limit was like 30 gigabytes, and we were getting close, and that's one of the reasons that we moved just WP Shout over onto Kinsta. The point is, yeah, the only time I've ever run into actual storage capacity because of images is with a business that they basically do these home inspection reports. So they're doing 10 reports a day, taking 40 like high quality images per report. So they're loading like 300 to 400 large images a day onto a WordPress site. And they did that for about 2 years, and they started to run out of storage. But for most clients, that's essentially never going to be an issue.
Okay. Cool.
If it does become an issue, I would say that AWS, well, it's not AWS, I think it's S3, that's their actual storage bucket.
Yeah, right.
But I don't really know how to use AWS. I've been in there, and it feels like, I think a lot of people understand it, but I definitely do not. So find somebody who does. It's not the kind of thing where you're going to be able to, it's not like SiteGround or Kinsta or something where you're going to be able to like click a nicely designed toggle from left to right and it turns on 100 gigabytes of extra storage. It's very it's extremely tech heavy. It feels like using like Windows, like the one before Windows 95. So just if you do end up needing to go that direction, just make sure you're talking to somebody. You can find like AWS experts on, what's that site called? The freelancing site. It starts with a C.
Codeable.
Codeable, yeah.
Yeah.
I think that's right, Codeable. Yeah, you can just find freelancers who are like AWS experts and have them do the sort of the thing where you're saving all your media to an S3 bucket. Because if you try to figure it out yourself, it can get really hairy, at least in my experience.
Okay.
Does that help?
Yeah, thank you.
You're very, very welcome. Okay, going back up, Norm. I sometimes see field backgrounds set to an image and sometimes set to a color. Is there a benefit of using an image versus a color for a form field background? Seems a lot simpler to just use a color. Okay, well, I think that's ultimately a design question. So on writers.com is a site I manage, and one of the things I did to try to make the design a little more delightful is, and this is all done in Beaver Builder, I created this like little parallax scrolling image background thing. And I made it, very, very, I made it very, very close to transparent. In other words, I have an almost entirely opaque white background on top of it, but I think it looks really nice. It kind of, yeah, it just brings like delight and dimensionality to the design. And overall, I inherited the writers.com design. I would love to pay a designer to just kind of like overhaul the site. So like, to me, this is like one, nicely designed piece and a site overall that could really use some design love whenever we can get around to it. But yeah, I think that's a nice instance of like a background image on an HTML element. And then, a lot of the time, yeah, sure, just a colored background looks really great. A lot of sites I see, I'm not sure if this is an example. Let me just see. Yeah, so I think if this homepage were going to get longer, I would probably want to start, breaking it up so that some of the sections have, like maybe just a really light gray background, and it kind of just gives the design it kind of lets the design breathe, and it lets you know that you're in a new section. So I think both are nice. Norm, I'm not sure if that's answering your question. This is just sort of off the top of my head. So if you want to follow up on that question in the chat, please go ahead. Not just a background on a page or a row. What I was referring to is on a form input field and using an image or a color for the background in the input field. I've never, so, okay. So the question is actually, let me see if I can find a form somewhere. Okay, here. So the question is, have I ever put an image as the background of a form input field? No, I don't think I have. I can't think of a good reason to do that. So maybe I agree with you. Yeah, I think, I mean, if you want to give it like a nice, you know, if you want to give it like a nice gray background or something, sure. But to make a form input field actually have an image background is, I don't know. It's ultimately, I think, a design question, but it's certainly not something I've ever done. WooCommerce does that often, really? Okay. I'd have to look into that. Woo uses endpoints for the My Account page. A couple of questions. How to edit how an input looks, an endpoint looks, as it's not a real page. How can I add a page like a Beaver Builder page as an endpoint that can be referenced as the My Account page in WooCommerce? I have a plugin to add the endpoint to the My Account menu, but I don't know how to design or register the endpoint. Okay. So Norm, when you say endpoint, I think you're talking about REST API endpoint. Yeah, that's not a bad idea. Hey, Norm, do you have, here, I'm gonna go ahead and unmute you. Yeah, you're unmuted. Are you, is your sound working? Hey.
I hope so.
Yeah, we can hear you.
Okay, cool. Yeah, if you go to like a My Commerce or the WooCommerce and you go to My Account, you know, they in their settings, they have My Account. And then under My Account, they have the various endpoints that they register, like my subscriptions, addresses, payments, edit your account, and those are all registered as endpoints, but they're not, you know, they're not a real page that you can edit.
Right.
They're just done as endpoints from within WooCommerce.
Got it. Okay. Okay, so let's talk about this, and let's go back to the image. Well, Patricia, when you say you're confused, are you confused about the image background part of Norm's question or the endpoint part of Norm's question?
I'm so confusing.
No, not at all. The endpoint. Okay, yeah. So Norm, I want to make sure that we're using terms in the same ways. When I hear endpoint, I think about WordPress REST API endpoint, which is a fairly specific thing. But I also have like this kind of common sense understanding of what you're talking about, which is that WooCommerce is like, where do you want your shop page to be? And when you point it to a page on your site, it kind of takes over that page and sort of messes it up. So if that's what you're talking about by endpoints.
Okay, you're going to go ahead and do that. Yeah, if you edit that, and then you have in WooCommerce, you'll have an actual page exists, and it's called whatever you register or whatever you define your page as under advanced.
Is it advanced? Okay.
Yeah, under advanced, and you go
down. Yeah, here we go.
And you
so
see
this,
My
right?
Account
Cart page, checkout page, My Account page. Sure.
Yeah. So the My Account page, when you select that, that's just supposed to have the short code WooCommerce _my_account. Okay. And it has that short code on it.
Okay.
Okay.
So I'm just going to create a page called My Account.
Yep.
And so if I publish that page without doing anything on the WooCommerce side, then when we look in My Account, we just have like this blank page that has nothing on it.
Yep.
But now if I kind of reload this so that it now knows about that page, and then go to this, and I set My Account page to be basically, if I tell WooCommerce to look at the My Account page when it wants people to be able to view their account, I believe that should change the behavior of this page.
But that page has to have the short code on it.
Is that true?
For WooCommerce.
I'm not used to, when I do WooCommerce, I'm not used to manually putting those short codes in. But you seem to be right, because the My Account page isn't doing anything that it wasn't doing before. Let me just, okay,
yeah,
so
and if you hover over even if you hover over the question mark to help,
it'll tell you that?
There, yeah, if you hover there.
Page contents. Yeah, but does that mean that you have to manually put that there, or just that if you wanted to put it there,
as far as I know, you've got to have it there.
Okay, so let me just do a cart page, and I'm just going to save my changes, and then maybe I forgot to save my changes actually. No, I think you might be right. I think you're right. So yeah, you got to put the short code there. So let's just do that. So WooCommerce cart. Okay. So let's see if that changed anything. Yeah, okay, yeah. So that's now behaving the way we would expect. And then if we go to the My Account page and we do the short code there, then WooCommerce is gonna, okay, so we'll do WooCommerce My Account. Okay. And then, yeah. Yep.
Okay.
So, okay, so you are correct. You got to put the short codes there. Now, I think your question is, well, go ahead.
Okay, so then, now that you've got the My Account page and you have the menu on the left, you have your checkout, you have your endpoints that are defined down below on the settings page. So
what does that mean, your endpoints?
So if you scroll down, okay, you'll see
check out
account
endpoints.
endpoints.
Okay, endpoints are appended to your page URLs to handle specific actions during the checkout process. Yeah, so I think that this, this
So
really
each one
is,
of those
go ahead, yeah.
Might be a REST, it might be a REST API point or whatever, but it, like under My Account, if you do like orders, it will then display the orders for that person.
Oh, sure, okay, yeah,
but
got it.
It's not it doesn't exist, it's quote, not a WordPress page.
Right.
It's
built
on the fly.
Okay, so the question is, how do they do that?
How can you change the appearance of that and edit it since it's not a WordPress page? And then if I do create a page, let's say another page that is built in Beaver Builder.
Yeah.
And I want to display that, how do I register that as an endpoint so I can access it from there?
Okay, yeah, I'm not sure about the second part of your question, but basically WooCommerce does this with, and this is a pattern that's present in a lot of plugins that are relatively well built. WooCommerce, as you said, here I'm just saying something in the chat, let me just make sure. Here, I'm gonna drop the screen share so I can add custom page account area. Okay, good. So yeah, so Robert just pasted something in that could be helpful. I'll check it out in a minute. But basically, WooCommerce runs off of templates. So yeah, there's a couple ways to talk about this. So let me point out another thing that is like what you're describing, where it's like, this isn't a real page. How did they do this? Let me point out another thing that's like that in WordPress that I found confusing for a long time. This author page, ivaccess.org/author/Clara. Well, I never created the author Clara page. It was just built on the fly by WordPress. Does that seem right, Norm? Are you still unmuted?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I'm here.
So you can see, like, this is an example of, like, in this case, it's an author archive page.
Yeah.
But exactly the way, you know, WooCommerce is doing with these things that apparently are called endpoints, you know, WordPress is building pages on the fly, and I can't edit the /author/Clara page and, you know, put a smiley face above here or whatever. There is no such page. I can only edit the user, and then magically, right, the user information comes out on this page, right? So it's a similar situation, and WordPress has this in a couple places. WordPress by default really only has this for archives, such as this author archive, or if we wanted to look at the uncategorized archive, right? There is no page for category uncategorized. WordPress built it on the fly somehow. And this actually kind of becomes a problem when you want to, for example, edit the SEO meta of this page specifically. Like if you wanted to give this page, you know, as far as Google's concerned, this is a real page. Like as far as Google's concerned, this is a page just like the About page is a page. But you can't go in by hand. Let's say you have the Yoast plugin running. You can't go in by hand and edit the SEO title of this page. To do that, you actually need code. But to get back to your question about WooCommerce doing that with these sorts of pages that are built on the fly, it builds those pages on the fly with a bunch of logic that is internal to the plugin itself. But you can edit those. You can edit the way these pages look and what they contain, basically by using hooks that WooCommerce supplies and also by using WooCommerce's template system. So the pattern that I started to talk about 5 minutes ago when I started this sentence, with a lot of commas in it, is the pattern is you take, this is how to override WooCommerce template files. You take, so you take the WooCommerce templates folder, and in this case, it would be like maybe the My Account folder within the WooCommerce templates folder, right?
Okay.
You paste that into the theme that's running. You create a WooCommerce directory in the theme that's running. Within that, you paste the template file that you're wanting to change. So if you wanted to change archive product.php, you would create WooCommerce. And I thought you had to create the templates folder within it, but maybe not. So like here, let me just, so if I go to like the theme editor, right? The theme that's running is the Beaver Builder child. I guess I'll have to FTP because I can't really create new files in the WordPress file editor. But basically, I would create a folder called WooCommerce, and then I would create a file called archive-product.php.
Yeah.
And it would actually override WooCommerce's default styling for that page. So I hope I'm answering. I think I'm not doing the. I think I'm not making the most sense to anybody but myself as I'm answering this. But basically, good plugins that register templates, they will create systems by which you override the styles that they provide. And the way you do that is almost always you create a folder in your running theme that's like the name of the plugin, and then usually a folder in there that says templates. And then as long as you're editing a template that has the exact same file name as the one that you're wanting to replace, that's how you override it. So in practice, if a client told me to like get rid of the downloads link on here, I would just have to sort of dive into WooCommerce's templates, and WooCommerce is extremely hooks based. So you can almost never find the PHP itself. You can almost never find the HTML itself. You're always looking at a hook that calls a hook that calls a hook that calls a hook that calls a hook. And so it's actually pretty hard to work with. So I would just sort of strap in for like a hard process of chasing down whatever hook it is that is causing the orders page to show up in this menu and deactivating that hook. So I'd love to answer this question with a little bit, I'd love to flesh this question out a little bit more, but we'd really have to dive deeply into code. But that's the kind of overall of how you approach that.
Okay.
How much sense is that making?
Yep, cool, got it. And by the way, that like on some of those archive pages, like you were showing the author or whatever, that's one of the really nice uses for Beaver Themer, because you can override those archive pages and put stuff on them.
Yeah, thank you for pointing that out.
Can't do the same thing, at least not that I have found. It cannot do the same thing with the WooCommerce quote endpoints, but you can with the archive pages.
Yeah, that makes sense to me. Yeah, so because the Beaver Themer is designed to be like a code-free approach to the WordPress template hierarchy, then yeah, if you've got an author archive page and you want just one of them to look different, that's something that you could do within Beaver Themer. Or, the sort of classical way to do it would be using the WordPress template hierarchy, and you create a template file called like author-archive-clara.php, and you tell it exactly how to look. Yep. And in fact, we had to, on some of our archive pages on WP Shout, we had to do this fairly clunky thing to give those pages custom SEO meta. Like the quick guides page on WP Shout, for us to be able to have that page have the meta title that we wanted for Google, we actually had to kind of just code that as a one-off using WordPress's hook system. So it can be difficult to edit archive pages because of the fact that they're not really a page. It's this thing that's auto-generated by WordPress using what feels like magic. Yeah. Okay, thank you, Norm.
Thanks.
Norm says the term retina is irritating. It's just a high-res display, right? Yeah, that's my understanding. Not sure. I don't know how it came to be called retina. Presumably everybody is viewing computers with their retinas. I'm not sure how else you would. Okay. Okay. Robert asks, have I ever used Pinegrow when creating WordPress themes? I'm currently starting to use it and was wondering about a workflow. I don't even know what that is, actually, Robert. I'm going to go ahead and unmute you. And if you want to tell me a little bit, and
Yeah.
I'd be happy to learn.
Can you hear me okay?
I can, yeah.
Good. I'm only recently getting into WordPress themes as a development thing.
Yeah.
So I'd be fairly okay on HTML, CSS, but I'm trying to do more and more on the WordPress end of things. So
Good, yeah.
Looking for things to make my life easier, essentially, is how I came across this program.
Yeah.
It's what it's all about.
Exactly.
I think a lot of people in this line of work are lazy, so they're looking for the easiest option on these things. And I came across Pinegrow, and essentially it's I suppose framework-wise, it's pretty agnostic. You can just work with HTML, or you can choose Bootstrap or Foundation or whatever, and you do your layout in it. And then once you're happy with say you start with your index page, and you create the relevant templates for your other pages after that, between custom pages and everything else. Yeah, there you go. And then you can, if you have the version that converts the WordPress to WordPress themes, you select different elements on your layout and assign a WordPress action to it. Export your theme, upload it to your WordPress site, and activate it. And it seems very, very good. Because I'm new to WordPress, I'm struggling with an efficient workflow for it. So it's kind of weird in that sense.
Understood. So I know nothing about Pinegrow, and I don't know if it's good or not. What I'm looking at could be good or bad. Really, the devil's in the details. In other words, this is what. So,
if you want to share my screen for a moment, I
sure.
have it open here in the background, and
yeah,
I can give you some ideas. So
yeah,
I have that running there. Let me just open. This guy, I think, is one I'm working on. Yeah.
Robert,
So
I'm not seeing your screen. You're going to have to start a screen share on Zoom.
Yeah. Let me see, where am I at on that? Can you see that there now?
I can see you. I can see your video.
Desktop, I think that's it. I have a warning sign on it, is my problem here.
Desktop sounds right.
Yeah, you're going to lose me, I think, unless this. No, it's telling me that I'll have to quit if I screen share. Right.
Oh, okay.
So that's no good. It's essentially, you just pick an element and assign it whatever role you want it to play. So whether it's the title or site description, or a link to where your logo is, a site link, effectively bring it back. And I found it's very efficient. It writes fairly clean code. But again, because I'm new to trying to create WordPress themes, the slowness for me is understanding the interactions between how WordPress works and the different commands I should be looking for, actions I'm looking for on things. And I was kind of hoping maybe somebody had experience working with WordPress and this, and they could give me some idea on how they do it.
If we've got any pine growers in the chat, now's the time to speak up. I'll just give you some general thoughts, basically because I don't have any experience with this system. What I'm looking at could be good or bad. In other words, just to pick another example, Visual Composer and Beaver Builder are respectively the worst and the best page builder in WordPress, and they both kind of look like this. Like, you could get a screenshot that would pretty much look like this, and you would be absolutely unable to tell. You would be unable to tell, quality differences. So I don't know if this is good or bad. I'm actually curious to learn more. But what I feel like could be helpful is just some thinking out loud about my own workflows. And it's not to say Pinegrow is a good idea or a bad idea. Again, I have absolutely no idea, but I'll just tell you how I approach building simple websites with WordPress. So what I use is a starter theme, usually either Astra or the Beaver Builder theme. In this case, I chose the Beaver Builder theme. And I do like the Beaver Builder theme. I think Astra's a little bit easier to use and it's a little more feature rich. So you run into fewer situations where you need to actually know how to code. But Astra's a little buggier as well. Like it'll have things where like the menu will kind of not be where it should be. Give me one second.
No worries.
And so, sorry about the background noise. So, yeah, I think that's kind of a toss-up. For a relatively inexpensive client project, I would maybe go with Astra or the Beaver Builder theme. It's really a toss-up. And really, the heavy lifting is done in a page builder. In terms of creating, very intricate custom layouts, the heavy lifting is done in a page builder. And in this case, literally every WordPress site I work on where I have a choice, I use the Beaver Builder plugin, Beaver Builder. And once you understand how to use Beaver Builder, you can do really a lot with it. So the genesis of this project is I actually set out as a challenge that was related to a writing project I was doing for WP Shout. I set out to copy basically exactly a Squarespace template that I think is really beautiful. So like this is a website I played with in Squarespace, and so this is not WordPress that we're looking at. This is Squarespace, and this is one of the templates that Squarespace has available. And I basically set out to copy it, and that this was kind of the result. And so the point is, with Beaver Builder, you can get really intricate. You can do almost anything you want to do in terms of custom designs, custom layouts. And then you just kind of have to know a little bit, you have to know the fundamentals of, well, actually, honestly, if you use Beaver Themer, you can get a pretty far way without really understanding how to dive into PHP. Like you could probably, have a contact page and a blog look the way you want. And yeah, at that point, you've got basically for anything that's got a custom design to it, like a homepage or a landing page or, a My Team page that's super elaborate or something, you use Beaver Builder. And then you just have to know enough about WordPress as a PHP system, or you have to know Beaver Themer well enough to be able to say, this is not how I want my blog to look. Like I don't want a sidebar, and I want a header that says that the most recent blog article was written 5 days ago or whatever, which are the kinds of things that you could do either using the WordPress template hierarchy and PHP or using Beaver Themer.
So Beaver Builder has extracted a layer away from PHP essentially.
Yes, so pretty much anything anybody is writing these days is to create layers of abstraction from PHP, because nobody wants to know PHP, but everybody wants a website. So the Beaver Builder plugin is visual design that's completely JavaScript based, and it's all drag and drop. But of course it sits on, WordPress's PHP backbone. In other words, this is a page and it lives at the home page, and it's, we have set it to use this page template and it has this parent. All of this is referring to PHP logic that lives in both WordPress and the Beaver Builder theme. But then what you have when you go to actually say, okay, what is the page content? That's where Beaver Builder takes over, and yeah. So everything is a layer of abstraction on top of PHP for the most part in terms of like, stuff people are selling.
Do you find that adds weight to the pages on the front end?
Yeah, people always ask about that. Yeah, I mean, it can. Like, here, I'll just show you like the WP Shout homepage. Once again, the WP Shout homepage is built. I mean, the custom part of it that we want to look a certain way is built in Beaver Builder. And so that means like that these are like kind of Beaver Builder like posts modules. And then when you, this is a really important thing that I feel like more people should know. When you want to get custom code onto like a Beaver Builder layout, you just register your own shortcode.
Okay.
Yeah, so the whole sort of like scroll on the WP Shout homepage is just a shortcode that is hooking in a ton of PHP functionality that actually creates this scroll. So it's all PHP saying, publish the most recent article. I mean, show me the most recent article. And then in this 2-column layout, do the next 5 most recent articles, and then do a reverse chronological, scroll of your link and quick guide content types, showing featured images for quick guides, but not showing them for links. So all of that is PHP. And so Beaver Builder is a great platform for you to do like purely visual stuff. Like I purely visually always want this hosting article to be in this part of the page. And then, later on, I want this custom functionality, which I've hooked in with a shortcode. So what does that do to performance? I mean, it really, the challenge with making the WP Shout homepage fast is actually, I think, all the kind of PHP logic to generate this, this scroll, because it's like looping, it's got like these loops on loops and all that stuff. So it's been challenging to make the WP Shout homepage as fast as we want it to be. Like it's been challenging to get Google to be like, I am in love with this page because it is so fast. And that's part of the reason that we moved to Kinsta. Like we, again, we were delighted to have, like we just loved our SiteGround hosting for a long time. And we did every other thing you could possibly do to make a site fast. We have, auto-optimize running, which basically combines JavaScript and CSS and speeds up the site that way. We have lazy loading in place, which I don't know if you noticed the little loading spinners on images. Yeah, see that?
Yeah.
That's lazy loading. So it basically, it speeds up page load because you're only loading in images when you need them. So we did every other speed thing we possibly could. And we were left with like a 1.5 or 2 second server response time. And we said, okay, well, we're gonna go to Kinsta, and the response time went up. Yeah. So
good.
Yeah. So the point is, does Beaver Builder slow down a site? Not enough to worry about.
Okay.
Yeah. Like there's
I
all
used
kinds of
Divi before, and it just cripples sites from my experience.
Yeah. Well, so there's a lot of ways that could be happening. I mean, Divi sucks. I shouldn't say I hate things, but I really don't like Divi. I also shouldn't say things suck, but I just don't like Divi. Let's put it that way. But it's not exactly the case that Divi is automatically going to make a site just unusable. You may have been using a bad theme, or you may have been using the Divi theme, which is inherently built with 1,000,001 options. So that means that like when you build a theme with too many options, what that means is the theme is going like, well, we should display the header of this site, right? That could be like 10 lines of HTML code in a theme that's just built super simply, right? Or it could be like 1,000 options. It should be like, well, does the header display on the top or the left or the right? Does the header zoom in using a JavaScript effect, or is it there all the time? Does it become transparent as you scroll? Does the header have a logo in it? Is the logo huge or tiny? Like if you're giving the user all of these options, which again are an abstraction layer away from PHP, then each of those options has a performance cost. And what happens on a theme, like if you just buy a random, it does everything theme from Theme Forest, because everything is an option, the theme is impossible to work with and it is inherently slow. So where a lot of your slowness may have been coming from was the theme itself, potentially, as well as, if you don't know what you're doing and you're loading maybe 5 very large images onto a page, that can make it seem like, oh, Divi is slow, but really what's happening is, your browser is struggling to load in like 20 megabytes of images or a giant background video or something like that. And then, Divi contributes some amount of just native slowness on its own, but it's without knowing kind of what you were looking at, it's hard to know what was causing that. But the point is, if you use a good page builder and you use it well, it's well worth the tiny performance cost.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Okay, you're very, very welcome. Yeah. Okay, so we are coming up on the hour. I'd love to take maybe one more question. A couple of people have asked, will this recording be shared? Yeah, I'll be happy to share it. In fact, I may even share it to just WP Shout's entire audience, not just up and running buyers. So one way or another, I will share it. Okay. Last call for questions about WordPress development. Norm asks, thoughts on doing development on a local host or just doing it on the web host? Okay, good question. So the question is, should you be doing your web development on a local host, or is it okay to just, you know, have like a little test site on your hosting and do your development there? Well, definitely the cool guy way to do it is to do it locally. Yeah, I can't really answer from like an agency standpoint. Like, there's a 10-person agency and there's 3 developers working on this site, and what workflow should you use? I can't really answer from that because, you know, my background is in just freelancing. So if it's just me and I'm basically the technical person for like a small to medium business site, the only advantage that I've really been grateful for local development is that you can do it without an internet connection. If your internet connection goes out, you can continue to do local development. But in practice, like, how did I build like any of the sites we've looked at? Like, how do I work on, you know, writers.com, or how do I, you know, how have I built out the beginnings of this website? Yeah, I just put it up and I just work on it pretty much in place. Now, if you have a site, okay, like let's say we were going to do like big design changes to WP Shout, where would I do that? I would do it on a staging site, but still on the remote server. Like I would, you know, Kinsta has easy staging, you know, functionality. So if there was something that I thought might introduce bugs, or if I was going to do like, you know, design changes, but I wanted, you know, to iterate on them for maybe a couple days before pushing them live, I would just create a staging copy of WP Shout, make my changes in that environment, and then pull it back over when it was ready. So yeah, a lot of people love local development, and I used it a lot in the past, but I guess in general, I find that for like a site like this, where it's like, I know exactly what I need to do, and I'm just gonna go do it. Especially if the domain name hasn't existed before. In other words, nobody's like looking at this site where you make changes to it. I sometimes find local development is overkill, and I just sort of do stuff on remote. Oh, the other advantage of local development is like, okay, if I make a change, right, then I have to save my change. Like if I were to change, like let's say I go here and I'm gonna, you know, change something about, by the way, I just didn't want to open FileZilla. You shouldn't be editing stuff in the WordPress file editor. You should be editing it with like an FTP client. But whether I'm using FTP or whatever, like let's say I want to, you know, change something in functions.php, I have to make the change and then update the file and then look on the front end and see if the update actually took or not. The amazing thing about local development, or another thing that I really love about local development, is you're just like writing code. Like you just start writing code. Sorry, I think my computer's freezing. But basically you just start writing code, and then you just save, basically. You just save, and you don't have to do a separate upload step because the local copy of this file is the only copy of this file. So it's just a nicer workflow. It's like, you know, I start a paragraph here and then I'm just done. I hit save and it's saved. So that's a nice thing, but I do find it to be overkill for small projects. Yeah, and there's some other, yeah, good. Patricia says, if it's a new site, I will build it on a staging site and promote it on the host. Yeah, I use local to blow things up, which I think means like make huge changes that break everything. Robert says, I like to develop locally first so I don't have to deal with uploads over the internet, which is exactly the benefit I was just talking about. And it is really cool. And then a staging site, then pushing live. So both of those are good workflows, I think, both of what Patricia and Robert just said. Yeah, that's very true. I kind of I do less local development than I used to because, you know, most clients are like, fix this thing. And I'm like, I know how to fix this. And I'll just sort of fix it on live. But the workflows that both of them described are good, and in general are better practice than what I might be inclined to do. So yeah, it's definitely a judgment call. If you get comfortable with the local server, like MAMP I think is pretty good. If you get comfortable with one, then you'll want to use it. If it's like hard to use, then you won't want to use it. So it just comes down also to your level of comfort doing good local development and deploying a site and migrating WordPress sites and stuff. yeah, so hopefully that's helpful. Those are really my thoughts, and I would say I'm probably one of the less responsible WordPress developers out there from the standpoint of like using, you know, kind of nicely designed workflows for this kind of thing. So I would honestly listen to Patricia and Robert and Julius over my own advice on this one. I think I'm a little bit lax in this way, and it's good not to be lax. People love desktop server. I've never used that, but definitely worth looking at. Patricia says it took me 2 years to understand how to use a local local server, and yeah, it's been hard for me too. I'm on a Windows machine, which just basically like, I don't know if you guys ever played Final Fantasy VII, but like there's a city with a giant plate, and all the wealthy people live on top of the plate, and everybody else lives under the plate, and it's never daylight. And using Windows is like living under the plate. So I've had a worse experience with like local development probably than a lot of people. All right, so on that weird note, yeah, this was really fun. I appreciate you guys, and I'll be here next week. And it didn't seem like a lot of this was about parts 1 through 3 of Up and Running, so we'll just keep that going. We can just kind of make these questions about literally anything, and I'm really enjoying this. Thank you guys. Have a good week. Stay safe, stay healthy, and yeah, I will send out the recording shortly, within a day or two. Thank you guys.